It is very interesting that Dodge with the Viper could have beaten Ford and Chevrolet's Corvette at being a mid-engined monster.
A little bit spicy.
They would have beaten them to the punch with this mid-engine supercar, and they were actually working on something like that, I believe, over 20 years ago. So, I've read this one interesting article about how a Dodge Viper were actually making a concept car that was mid-engine, right, in the 90s. It's hard to believe that now Corvette has its C8 mid-engine, and then there was a Ford GT, which was also mid-engine. So basically, the story goes that there was a guy called Chris Theodore who was a general manager for Chrysler back in the day, and he was in charge of the small car platform engineering. I'm sure the people from who are familiar with Ford GTs, that name sounds familiar. We're talking about the new generation Ford GTs because he later on went to work at Ford after being frustrated with Chrysler and its antics and its politics and so forth. We all know how that goes. So the story goes in '96 the Dodge engineers had been working on a concept, and this concept was actually based on the existing Viper back then and trying to figure out how to make the body work using existing Viper parts, keeping the costs really low. And then, so the way they were going to do this was use a form of reverse engineering. Reverse engineering is when the engine is actually facing the opposite side with the fan and the other things right by the taillights. And then the transmission behind the driver's seat. Transmission and transactions kind of behind the driver's seat. A lot of mid-engine cars back in the day, like Countages and Diablos, they kind of use the same concept. Basically, they use reverse engineering. So they were actually going to do this with the Dodge Viper, and rumor had it they had figured it out, keeping the engine cooled and everything working solidly. And they actually did build two of these cars with actual body panels, suspension, steering, and so forth, with Viper's V10 signature engine. And then they presented this to Bob Lutz and Tom Gale. For some funny reason, they were not receptive to this idea because they had not told
This is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. Oh, get it away from me, man.
them they had been working on a project like this. Kind of like how those bosses got the Viper started in the first place. But I don't know whether it's ego or what was going on at the time. They cut the project. Then they tried it another time. And I think at the time they probably tried to present it as more of a race car. It was called the Viper GTM project or mid-engine Viper project. But
お前はもう死んでいる。何
once again, the timing was off because Daimler was actually buying Chrysler at the time. With that merger going on, all projects were put to bed. So that meant it was done. There was no way to revive it. Frustrated over what it
그놈 아따 아 뭐야 이 개 씨발 수류탄 뭐야 아이 개 씨발년이 진짜
happened The team that had actually started assembling this mid-engine Viper moved to Ford with some of the other engineers from the Dodge and Chrysler team. And when they were there, pitched the idea of a reborn GT40, which eventually became the 2005 Ford GT. We all know how beautiful that car was. So, if politics and ego hadn't played a part in the Viper's development for a mid-engined supercar, they would have come to the races first. Imagine a mid-engined Dodge Viper, all that torque and everything there that comes with it at a racetrack. Whoa. I think they would have been way, way ahead of other car companies right now. I mean, those engines, the Viper look, everything. The whole concept. I guess maybe they were also thinking, since the Viper had been modeled after an AC Cobra, that it should remain with that idea of a mid-engine big block or big engine sports car, rear-wheel drive, two-seater, the spirit of the AC Cobra. I know even at Chevrolet, that had always been the delay, because Zohar Dantov had started that concept years ago of a mid-engined Corvette. But that Americana thing of having a V8 in the front and driving the rear wheels, that had always stopped it. More for a marketing ploy, I guess. Even though everybody knows the handling would have been much better, cars would have been engineered much better with a mid-engine. So anyway, they're kind of putting the mid-engine anyway, because they're pushing their motor further back and further back and further back. I don't even know why they didn't do it back then. And yeah, so basically Viper could actually have been a mid-engined car. That would have been really interesting. Now, my thing is this. I'm not an engineer, but exactly how difficult is it to build a mid-engine Viper? That is something I've always been contemplating. I want to see if I can, maybe that's my next project, to see if you can build a mid-engine Viper. Yeah, so that should be an interesting project. That should be, to challenge yourself. Now, will Viper ever be built with a mid-engine? I don't think so. The times have changed. The window of opportunity has closed. Things are different now. Everybody's going electric. We're talking last Viper engines, 8.3, 8.4 liter, V10s. I don't know if they'll pass these days. Besides, electrical motors make way more torque. So I don't think Vipers are cars that can be made again. Everybody's actually moving. It's become more of an electric race. Maybe a mid-motored electrical Viper. Now that's a concept. That would be a Tesla Roadster killer. That would really, really interesting, I think. Yeah, so anyway, just rambling and thoughts going on in my head about what could have been. I know Viper failed to put a mid-engined car, and then Corvette, well, after like 40 years, finally put a mid-engined Corvette to the track, to the streets. Ford did it, GT40, then there's the next GT40, 3 series of GT40s mid-engined cars, supercars. So, yeah, it would have been interesting for Mopar to have also have had a mid-engine supercar. Well, yeah, that's just me rambling and thinking of what could have been. The only Viper I know in existence that is mid-engined was one that I saw from an engineering company. I believe it's called DPC Racing. And they did a one-off, building it from a tube chassis and using ACR parts from a total Viper. And this thing looks really mean. It's just an indication of what could have been. What could have been with these Viper mid-engine cars. Your loss, Chrysler. You could have had it all. Anyway, the Viper wasn't a success. Not a huge success like Corvette. Also because it didn't come in automatic like the Corvettes do. But maybe they've learned from their mistakes, and so this car has a tube frame, 8.4 liter Viper V10, and hits the scales at only 1,980 pounds, approximately 900 kgs. So you're looking at a car that weighs under 1,000 kilograms with a Viper engine. That's a recipe for something interesting. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. Thank you and goodbye.
Do it! Just do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams. Yesterday, you said tomorrow. So just do it! Make your dreams come true! Just do it! Some people dream of success while you're gonna wake up and work hard at it. Nothing is impossible. You should get to the point where anyone else would quit, and you're not gonna stop there. No, what are you waiting for? Do it! Just do it! Yes, you can! Just do it! If you're tired of starting over, stop giving up.
Don't let your kids watch it!